You are not the kind of man this happens to. This is what you think in the car on the way back from the apotheke, which is not a thought you are proud of but is the thought you have, honest and unhelpful in equal measure. You are 38 years old. You are a landscape architect from Nottingham. You have been careful your whole adult life in the specific way of a man who grew up watching his parents not be careful and decided early that care was the available alternative to their particular chaos. You have a pension. You have a 5-year plan that is now 6 years old and still functioning. You eat well and sleep enough, and you do not make impulsive decisions about large things. You are, by any reasonable measure, a man who should not be sitting in the passenger seat of a Volvo in Bergen in November with a white paper apotheke bag on the back seat that is going to change the shape of everything. Celia is driving. She has been driving with both hands on the wheel and her eyes entirely on the road since they left the apotheke on Torgallmenningen, which is how she drives when she is thinking about something she has not finished thinking about. She is 35 years old and she is a marine biologist at the Institute of Marine Research, which is the kind of job that sounds romantic until you understand what it actually is. Years of patient data collection, long weeks at sea on research vessels. A relationship with uncertainty that has made her the most patient person you have ever met, and also the least willing to accept conclusions that are not supported by the evidence. She grew up in Ålesund, on the western coast, in a family of fishermen who became teachers who became scientists over 3 generations, the trajectory of a Norwegian family moving through the 20th century with the specific quiet ambition of people who believe in education the way other people believe in religion. She has been in Bergen for 9 years. You have been in Bergen for 3, on a contract with a landscape design firm that won a major municipal project, a new waterfront park in Bergenhus, and which has expanded since then into other projects, other years, the city growing on you in the way coastal cities grow on people from inland places, slowly, and then completely. You have been together for 19 months. You know she reads scientific papers the way other people read novels, lying on the couch on Sunday afternoons with a highlighter, making small sounds of either agreement or disagreement in the margins. You know she has a specific relationship with the sea that is not sentimental but is also not purely professional, the relationship of someone who grew up watching it from a kitchen window and understanding it as a presence rather than a backdrop. You know she calls her father every Thursday at 8 in the evening without fail, not Sunday, Thursday, because Thursday is when he is home from the boat and has had a day to decompress and is ready to talk. You know her laugh arrives before you expect it, and is louder than her speaking voice, which is quiet, and that this combination, the quiet voice and the sudden loud laugh, is one of the most specific things about her, and one of the things you would miss most if you had to make a list of the things you would miss. You know she has never once mentioned the future in terms that include you directly, which is not because she doesn't think about it but because she is Norwegian and Norwegian people do not state the future before it is the present, because stating it risks making it smaller than it is. You know these things. You are about to learn what they add up to. She parks outside the apartment building on Nostet, a white rendered 1950s building, 3 floors, the apartment on the 2nd floor with the view across Puttefjorden that makes Bergen worth the rain, which is significant rain, Bergen rain, the rain of a city that receives more annual precipitation than almost any other city in Europe and that has arranged its whole character around this fact. She turns off the engine. She does not get out. She sits for a moment looking at the water, the fjord in November, grey and still, the hills on the far side just visible through the low cloud. Then she says, in Norwegian, Jeg trer 6 beg vet hva det vil si. I think we both know what it means. She is not talking about the test. She is talking about the result. She is right. You both knew before the apotheke. The apotheke was confirmation, not discovery. She gets out of the car and takes the bag from the back seat and goes upstairs. You follow her. The apartment is Celia's apartment, which is different from saying the apartment you share, though you have been here most nights for 14 months and your things are distributed through it in the specific way of a long relationship that has not yet formalized its geography. Your boots are on the rack. Your coffee is in the cupboard, the Italian roast you brought from Nottingham on your last visit home, and which Celia drinks with the tolerance of someone who prefers Norwegian coffee but has decided this is not worth arguing about. There are 2 toothbrushes. There is not a drawer that is formally yours. The apartment is Celia's apartment with you in it, and you have understood this and been comfortable with it, and you are only now standing in the hallway while she puts the apothec bag on the kitchen table, understanding that this arrangement has a timeline that ends here. She does the test in the kitchen, not the bathroom. She does it at the kitchen table, which is where she processes data, which is what this is, data, the first piece of information in a decision that will require many more. 2 lines. She looks at them for a moment with the expression of a scientist confirming a hypothesis she has been running for 2 weeks. Then she looks at you. She says, "HVA tänker du? What do you think? Not what do you want to do? What do you think?" The distinction is characteristic and important. She is not asking for your feelings. She is asking for your analysis, because the analysis is where she starts, and she wants to know if yours has produced the same result as hers. You tell her what you think. She nods once, a slow, deliberate nod, and says, "Det tänker jag också." I think so too. And that is the decision. Made at a kitchen table in Bergen in November in 4 sentences, with the compressed efficiency of 2 people who understand each other well enough to skip the scaffolding. She calls her father that Thursday. Not early, she waits until the regular time, 8 in the evening, because changing the time of the call would communicate alarm before she has decided how much alarm the situation warrants. You are in the living room reading, or holding a book, which is different, and you can hear the call from the kitchen, the low, careful Norwegian of a daughter telling her father something that requires care. The call is 22 minutes, which is longer than the usual Thursday call. When she comes out, she sits in the chair across from you and says, "Papa will at 6 skal come till Ålesund. Papa wants us to come to Ålesund." You have been to Ålesund once, in the summer, for 3 days. You met the family, her father Gunnar, her mother Ragna, her 2 older brothers Torsten and Mikkel. You thought it went well. You are now revising this assessment. Not because it didn't go well, but because going well in a summer visit is a different category from what is about to happen in Ålesund, and the distance between those categories is what the next few weeks will teach you. Celia's father Gunnar is a man who spent 25 years fishing the Norwegian Sea and now manages the logistics of a fishing cooperative in Ålesund, which means he spent 25 years doing something genuinely dangerous with great competence, and now spends his time ensuring other people can do the same thing with the support they need. He is 61. He is not a large man but has the specific physical quality of someone who has worked outdoors on moving water in all weather, a kind of settled density, like something that has been compressed by repeated pressure into something harder and more stable than it started. He does not talk much. He is not unfriendly. He is warm, in the specific Ålesund way, which is the warmth of people who live in a place that requires cooperation to survive and who have therefore made warmth a practical virtue rather than a social one. When you met him in summer, he shook your hand and asked about your work with genuine attention, and that was most of it. You left thinking he was straightforward. You were not wrong, but straightforward in Gunnar's case contains more than it appeared to. Celia's mother Ragna is the person in the family who speaks. She is a retired school nurse, practical, direct, possessed of the specific confidence of a woman who has spent 30 years being the calmest person in a room full of sick children and their frightened parents. She asks questions without softening them, and she answers questions the same way, and you have always found her easier to read than Gunnar, not because Gunnar is complicated but because Gunnar communicates in a register that requires a different kind of reading. You drive to Ålesund on a Saturday in early December. The drive from Bergen is 5 hours, north along the coast, through the Hardangerfjord area and up through Romsdalen, a road through some of the most dramatic landscape in Europe, mountains and fjords and the specific Norwegian winter light that at noon is already considering its exit. Celia drives. You watch the landscape and think about what you know and don't know about what you are driving toward. You are not afraid exactly. You are in the state of a man who has always been careful and is now in a situation where care is no longer the relevant variable, and has not yet identified what the relevant variable is. Gunnar and Ragna live in a house in Bergen, on the eastern edge of the Ålesund municipality, a white wooden house with a garage and a garden that in December is bare and frozen and that in summer, you remember, had a vegetable patch along the south fence that Ragna tends with the organized purposefulness she brings to everything. The house is not large. It is a house that has held this family for 30 years and has been maintained with the specific Norwegian relationship to the built environment, which is that things are kept in the condition they were built in, either neglected nor ostentatiously improved. The garage door is open when you arrive. Gunnar is inside. He is working on a boat engine, an outboard motor from one of his cooperative's smaller vessels, laid out on a workbench with its components organized in the specific way of a man who takes things apart in an order that tells him how they go back together. He looks up when you pull in. He nods. He says, "God, Reese? Good trip." Celia says yes. He looks at you. He says, "Come in. Come in." He puts down the tool he is holding, a socket wrench set carefully on the bench rather than dropped, because a man who takes things apart in a specific order also puts his tools down specifically, and wipes his hands on a rag and comes inside. Ragna has made pinnekjot, the traditional Western Norwegian Christmas dish, cured and dried lamb ribs, steamed over birch sticks, with mashed turnip and potatoes. The smell of it fills the house. She comes out of the kitchen and embraces Celia for a long time, and then she looks at you and says, "Bride do her. Good that you're here." It is not quite what she said the first time you visited. That was "glad du kom," glad you came, a pleasantry. This is different. Bride do her is a statement about the situation rather than a social formula, a woman saying directly what she means, which is that your being here specifically, now, under these circumstances, is the right thing, and she wants you to know she has noted it. Dinner is the four of you and the two brothers, Torsten, 39, who works on one of the larger vessels in the cooperative, and Mikkel, 36, who teaches secondary school in Ålesund and has driven across the Ålesundfjord for this. The pinnekjot is extraordinary. The conversation over dinner is easy in the specific way of a family that has been eating together for 30 years and has run out of the need to perform anything for each other, which makes room for you in an unexpected way. You are the only person at the table who has to pay attention, and paying attention is what you do well, and Mikkel notices this and directs things at you, asks questions, includes you. With the easy generosity of a teacher who spends his days bringing people into conversations they don't yet know they belong in. After dinner, after Ragna and Celia have cleared the table and Torsten has taken his phone outside to call his wife and Mikkel has started on the dishes, Gunnar stands from the table and looks at you. He does not say anything. He puts on his jacket and goes to the garage. You follow him. In the garage he stands at the workbench with the outboard motor's components arranged before him. He picks up the socket wrench. He looks at the engine for a moment. Then he says, without looking at you, "That do know motor? Do you know anything about engines?" You say not much. He nods. He says, "Det er greit. Man lærer." That's fine. You learn. He hands you a torch. He shows you where to hold it. He begins working. You hold the torch. The garage is cold and smells of oil and the specific machine smell of a well-maintained outboard. He works with the precise economy of a man who has been taking apart and reassembling marine engines for 30 years and whose hands know what they are doing before his mind has to decide. He does not explain what he is doing. He shows you, occasionally, by moving something into your line of sight and letting you see it. You watch and hold the torch and do not speak, because speaking would interrupt something that is proceeding correctly. After 40 minutes he sets the wrench down. He looks at the engine. He says, "Celia har alltid gjort ting på sin egen mate." Celia has always done things her own way. You say you know. He says, "Vi er vant til å bekymre oss for henne." We are used to worrying about her. He says this not as a criticism or a warning but as information, the factual description of a family relationship, the way he might describe a feature of a vessel he is responsible for. He is used to worrying about her because she goes to sea on research vessels and whether that worries him, because she chose a life that takes her away from the coast she grew up on, because she has always known what she was doing and this has never entirely stopped him from worrying about it. He looks at the engine. He says, "Det hjälper vita noen passer på henne." It helps to know that someone is looking after her. He does not look at you when he says this. The garage is quiet. Outside, the Ålesund December. The specific dark of a coastal Norwegian winter, which is a full dark, the dark of a place that understands that light is not guaranteed and arranges itself accordingly. He picks up the socket wrench again. He says, "Hold Lichten der." Hold the torch there. You hold the torch there. You work for another hour. When the motor is reassembled, he starts it briefly to confirm it catches, and he nods at it with the satisfaction of a man whose confidence in his own competence is not pride but simply accuracy. He turns it off. He says good night and goes inside. You stand in the garage for a moment alone with the bench and the tools in their specific places and the smell of the engine and the understanding that you have just been told something that was not said, which is, "I am trusting you with something I have been the custodian of. Don't let it break." Inside, Ragna has made coffee and a plate of pepperkaker, the thin Norwegian ginger biscuits of December. You sit in the living room with the family and drink the coffee, and Mikkel tells a long story about a parent-teacher conference that becomes funnier as it goes, and Torsten laughs at the end with the laugh of an older brother who has been waiting for the punchline. Silja sits beside you, and at some point in the middle of Mikkel's story she puts her hand on your knee, briefly, and takes it away, and no one notices or mentions it, and you understand that it was not for anyone else. It was for you. It was her version of a statement, the most direct thing she has said to you since the kitchen table in Bergen, delivered in the language of a hand on a knee that is there and then gone, which in Silja's register means, "I have noted what you did in the garage. I know what it cost. We are all right." The months that follow are Norwegian months, dark and cold and organized. Silja's pregnancy is managed by her own jordmor at the Helsestasjon in Bergen, a small serious woman named Astrid who treats Silja as the marine biologist she is and gives her data rather than reassurance, which is exactly what Silja wants. The appointments are efficient and informative. You go to all of them. At the third appointment, Astrid asks you a practical question, about your work schedule, about how the parental leave will be arranged, and your answer is detailed enough that she nods with the particular nod of someone revising an estimate upward. You notice this and do not mention it. You sort out the formal arrangements with the Norwegian system, which has thought about this situation much more thoroughly than you have. The parental leave is divided. Silja will take the first months, then you will take yours, then she will return to work and you will finish, and the arrangement fits your project timelines in a way that surprises you until you understand that the Norwegian parental leave system was designed to fit into the lives of people with demanding jobs. Because the people who designed it had demanding jobs and understood that the alternative was a system no one would use. You register your relationship formally with the Folkeregister. You notify your firm. Your project director, a Bergen woman named Hilda who has 3 children and has managed parental leave for half the office over the last decade, looks at the schedule you have prepared and says, "Det går fint. It'll be fine." She says it with the specific Norwegian certainty that means she has already worked out how it goes fine and is simply reporting the conclusion. Ragna comes to Bergen in February to begin preparing the practical things, not a shower, not a ceremony, but the specific Norwegian practicality of a grandmother who has decided what is needed and is going to make sure it exists. She and Silja spend a Saturday in Lagunen and a Saturday in the specialist children's shops in central Bergen, and you join the second Saturday with a list Ragna has given you of things you are responsible for acquiring. The list is precise. You acquire the things on it precisely. Ragna checks them with the same efficiency she checks a patient's chart. She nods. She says, "Fint. Good." You understand that this is significant praise from Ragna, that fint means you have met the standard, that the standard is non-trivial, and that meeting it has been noted. Your own parents come from Nottingham in March. Your mother, who has worried about you since the 5-year plan and before, arrives having read a significant amount about Norway and the Norwegian system and about Bergen specifically, and she sits in the Nosted apartment across from Silja and asks her careful, informed questions about the pregnancy and the birth plan and the parental leave and the arrangements, and Celia answers them directly and fully. And your mother leaves with the expression of a woman who has conducted an assessment and arrived at a conclusion she is satisfied with. Your father, who is a quieter man, he was an electrician, is retired now, has the practical patience of someone who spent 40 years solving problems that required care, spends most of the visit looking at Bergen through the apartment window and saying very little until the last evening when he and you are alone in the kitchen and he says, "She's solid, Rob." He means Celia. He also means, you will understand later, the whole thing, Celia and Bergen and the arrangement, and the family and Ålesund and the garage and the motor and all of it. He means, the ground you are standing on is solid. He says it the way he says things that matter, which is quietly and once, and then he makes himself a cup of tea and goes to bed. Gunnar calls you in April. Not Celia, you? On your number, which he has had since December but has not used until now. He calls on a Thursday evening, which is his evening, the evening after the boat and the day to decompress. He says he is calling because the cooperative has a vessel coming into Bergen for maintenance in late April, and he will be in the city for 2 days, and he thought, if you had time, you might show him the waterfront park project. The one you have been working on for 3 years. He thought you might show him around it. You say yes immediately. You meet him on a Thursday afternoon on the Bergen waterfront, the park half finished around you, the cranes and the hoardings and the emerging spaces that will in 18 months be what you designed them to be. He walks through it with you for 2 hours. He asks about the design decisions, why this material in this place, why this sight line, why the relationship between the water edge and the planted areas. He asks the questions of an engineer, structural, functional, what holds what and why, and you answer them because these are the questions you know how to answer. At the end of the 2 hours he stands at the water's edge and looks at the fjord and then at the park and then at you. He says, "Do bigger things som varer." You build things that last. He says it the way he said it helped to know someone was looking after her, as information, a fact he has established, and is reporting. Then he says he needs to get back to the vessel. He shakes your hand. He goes. You stand at the water's edge for a moment alone, looking at the half-finished park that you have been building for 3 years, and the fjord beyond it, and you understand that you have just been told something that will take you a long time to fully receive. The birth happens on a Sunday morning in June at the Ålesund University Hospital, not Alleville, Bergen, because Celia arranged to give birth in Bergen specifically, which required a referral and a conversation with her jordmor that Celia managed with the focused competence she brings to all bureaucratic obstacles. You have been awake for the whole night before, in the apartment, the both of you, not in panic but in the specific state of people who have been waiting for something for 9 months and are now in the last hours of the waiting. Celia manages her contractions with the same focus she brings to a difficult data set, concentrated, quiet, specific in what she asks of you, which is to not make things worse by performing anything, which you do not do, which she notes, and does not mention. You drive to Ålesund at 4 in the morning, the Bergen streets empty and dark, the rain that is Bergen's permanent condition lighter than usual, almost polite. The midwife at Ålesund is called Freudis, a tall Bergen woman of 50 who has delivered several thousand babies and who speaks to Celia with the flat professional respect of someone who has understood in the first 5 minutes that the woman in front of her does not need managing. She speaks to you the same way, which surprises you and which you will think about later as an example of what the Norwegian system's assumption of paternal competence actually feels like when it is applied to you. The room is clean and functional, and the light is the specific controlled light of a Norwegian hospital, designed for purpose rather than atmosphere. You are on the right side. You are there for the full 11 hours. Celia does not ask you to say anything particular. She does not need a particular thing said. She needs you to be there, which is different from needing you to perform being there, and you are there in the first way and not the second, and this is the most useful thing you have done in 11 hours, and it is enough. The baby arrives at 3:17 in the afternoon. She weighs 3 kilograms 400 grams. She is 50 centimeters. Freudis places her on Celia's chest and Celia says her name, Astrid, before anyone asks, before anyone has confirmed anything, in the quiet voice of someone who has been carrying this name for 5 months and is now giving it to the person it belongs to. You did not choose the name. Celia chose it, for her mother's mother, for a great-grandmother who fished alongside her husband in the Sunmore Islands in the 1940s and who Celia has spoken about with a specific reverence that you understood was not nostalgia but identification. You received the name when she offered it, and you have never thought of another. Freudis places Astrid in your arms. You hold her. You were not ready for the specific weight of her, not the number, the fact. The fact of a person who has been present for 9 months as a conversation, a series of data points, an outboard motor reassembled in a cold garage, a hand on a knee, a 2-hour walk through a half-finished park, and who is now in your arms in a hospital room in Bergen being entirely and completely herself. Gunnar and Ragnar arrive at 5. They have driven from Ålesund, 5 hours, leaving at noon when Celia called, arriving 2 hours after Astrid. Ragnar goes directly to Celia and stays there. Gunnar stands at the door of the room for a moment looking at the 4 of you, Celia, you, Astrid, Ragnar, with the expression of a man who has driven 5 hours for this and finds it exactly worth the drive. He comes to where you are standing and he looks at Astrid for a long time. Then he puts his hand on your shoulder. It is brief and deliberate and specific. Not a grip, not a pat, a placement. The gesture of a man who has reassembled marine engines for 30 years and understands that the placement of things matters. He looks at his granddaughter. Then he looks at you. He nods once. The same nod from the garage in December, the settled one, the one that is not filing information but confirming a conclusion already reached. Then he moves to Ragnar's side. You stand with Astrid against your chest and the Bergen hospital around you and the June evening coming through the window, which in Bergen in June is the long Scandinavian evening that does not properly dark until after 11, the light lasting, and you think about the garage in December, and the nod and what it means when a man who has spent his whole life watching the sea trusts you with something he loves. 6 weeks later you are awake at 2 in the morning because Astrid is awake, and this is now the permanent condition of life at this hour, a slow circuit of the Nosted apartment, from the bedroom to the living room window and back, the weight of a person against your chest who arrived 6 weeks ago and has completely reorganized the apartment and the sleep schedule and the understanding of what matters. Celia is asleep. It is your shift. The city outside is Bergen at 2 in the morning, the Putafort invisible from the window, a dark surface holding the lights of the opposite shore, the rain that is always Bergen's companion, gentle and continuous against the glass. The mountains are invisible in the dark, but you know they are there, the 7 mountains of Bergen that define the city's shape, that you have been learning the names of for 3 years and have not finished learning. Astrid's eyes are open. She is looking at the light from the street, the orange reflection of it off the wet pavement, the way it moves when a car passes. She tracks it with the focused attention of someone assembling information about a world she has been in for 6 weeks, and is still calibrating. Her fist finds your finger. The grip is stronger than you expected. Celia told you it would be. She told you about the palmar grasp reflex on a Tuesday in April, the marine biologist briefing you on the biology of what was coming, which is something she does, converts the future into information, because information is how she prepares for things. It does not feel like a reflex. It feels like the thing Dan said about spreadsheets, not the point, but what you do with your hands while you wait for the point. Only now you understand that this is the point. The grip is the point. This specific 2 in the morning with the rain on the window, and the fjord below, and the mountains you cannot see, and the weight against your chest, and the fist on your finger, is the point. Everything before this was what you did while you were waiting to arrive here. Your jacket is on the hook by the door. In the inside pocket, folded once, is the printout from the second scan, the one where the sonographer, a quiet man who had the precise Norwegian manner of someone who gives you the information and trusts you to receive it, said, "Her ser 6 henny tidlig." Here we can see her clearly. You folded the printout without deciding to. You have taken it out 3 times, once at the Nosted kitchen table alone in February, once in the garage in Ålesund in December standing at the workbench after Gunnar went inside, and once tonight, before Astrid woke up. At Gunnar and Ragna's house in Ålesund there is a framed version of the same image on the shelf in the hallway. Ragna put it there, in a frame that was waiting in a drawer, between a photograph of the Sunnmøre coast and a small carved fish that belonged to her mother's mother, the woman Astrid is named for. Both the jacket pocket and the hallway shelf are true at once. Neither cancels the other. Everything that was a 5-year plan is now a grip on a finger at 2 in the morning. Everything you were careful about is now this apartment, this rain, this fjord, this child against your chest who knows nothing yet about being careful and is therefore purely herself in a way you have not been since before you decided that care was the available alternative to your parents' chaos. You did not plan the specific shapes of this. Not Bergen, not Celia, not the marine biologist who sends Dan an email before she tells you she sent it, not the fishing cooperative manager in a cold garage in Ålesund handing you a torch without explaining why, not the hand on the knee that is there and then not there, not the walk through a half-finished park on a Thursday afternoon, not the nod. You planned a 5-year plan. What happened instead is that you were found by something that had no interest in your plan and incorporated you into itself anyway, by people who were going to love you into a shape you didn't choose because that is what happens when you stay in the thing long enough to be claimed by it. It does not ask if you are careful. It asks if you will stay. You stayed. Astrid's fist tightens on your finger. The rain on the window. Bergen at 2 in the morning, the fjord below, the 7 mountains in the dark. Some men respond to an unplanned life by making more plans. The plan was never the point. The plan was what you did with your hands while you were waiting to be changed. This is the change. The rain. The grip. The window. The city that took 3 years to grow on you and is now the only city. The apartment that was Celia's and is now something else. The fist on your finger, which is technically a reflex, which is not a reflex, which is everything that was abstract arriving in your hands at 2 in the morning with the weight of a person and the grip of something that has been trying to happen since before either of you knew it was.